After any mass shooting, the anti-gunners blame guns on lawful gun owners. So it's no surprise to see them trying to exploit the recent tragedy in Oxford, Michigan. But this time they've ratcheted up their legal strategy to try to scare gun owners. Now they're actually attacking the parents of the killer. And why are they doing this? It's a great question. We're going to explore it here. Is it because the parents have done something wrong and deserve to be punished? Maybe. We have to find what the facts are. Or maybe it's because the Democratic county prosecutor sees this as an opportunity, an excuse to punish law-abiding gun owners and scare them. Well, this approach may very well cause parents across America to think twice before taking their kids hunting or passing down grandpa's rifle to their grandkids. A lot to discuss here, so don't go away. Hey folks, I'm Mark and welcome to the Four Boxes Diner. The recent school shooting in Oxford, Michigan is obviously a tragedy. 4 teenagers are dead and 8 more were injured in the shooting. Sadly, there were lots of warning signs apparently before the shooting. That may be one reason why the prosecutor has charged the parents of the suspected shooter with involuntary manslaughter. But you need to understand the possible hypocrisy here, okay? While the left vilifies the parents, the school administrators appear to be getting a free pass. Why do I say that? Isn't it the school that was supposed to be in charge of the safety of the students that were injured and killed? This horrible shooting occurred on their watch, on their property at the school. Prosecuting parents is an extraordinary move that, to me, sets a potential dangerous precedent. But it fits with a theme that we've seen with the anti-gun crowd over and over again. That is that gun owners are easy targets, but government actors are beyond reproach. Let me explain. So what do we know right now about what happened leading up to the Oxford, Michigan school shooting? The first thing to remember is that the facts are still being uncovered, okay? That's a very important caveat in any case like this, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But what we do know is sort of a basic timeline of events so far. The day before the shooting, a teacher had discovered that 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley was searching the internet for ammunition. The teacher saw this and notified school officials, the administrators. They contacted the parents, but the school apparently did not take any other actions at that point. The next morning, a different teacher found a drawing on Crumbley's desk. It showed a gun and a bullet. It also included notes that were quite troubling. These notes said things like, "Blood everywhere," "The thoughts won't stop," "Help me," "My life is useless," and "The world is dead." Clearly, this young man was mentally disturbed and needed help. This time, school officials called in the parents of Ethan and Ethan himself into the school for a meeting. Everyone in that room, including the school administrators, knew all of this frightening information. They all had access to the same information, as best I could tell. But at the end of the meeting, the school sent Ethan back to class. Not long thereafter, Ethan removed the gun from his backpack and began shooting the school up, okay? And ultimately, remember, it was the school officials who had the ability, as I see it, they had the responsibility, really, to remove this disturbed student from campus. Yet it seems like they did nothing but call the parents in for a meeting. The district superintendent later said, quote, "No discipline was warranted." Well, that seems like a flawed assessment, doesn't it? The school's inaction was so alarming that even the rabidly anti-gun New York Times took notice. The New York Times recently looked into the school's responsibility and wrote an article about it. The story quotes law professor Catherine Ross saying that she found the school's reaction truly astounding. I'll say, according to the Professor Ross, the school had more than the ability to remove the student from campus. They actually had a legal and an ethical responsibility to do so. It was for the safety of Ethan and all of the other students to do so. Now, say, for the sake of the argument, that the school was right that discipline was not warranted. That still doesn't explain why the school administrators did not mention any concerns to the school resource officer or to the SRO. That's the armed police officer whose job it was to patrol and protect the campus. And why did the school mention any of these concerns to the sheriff's office? I mean, the sheriff actually has asked the very same question here. And in my view, if anyone is to be blamed for failing to alert the sheriff's office, it should be the school administrators. I mean, after all, if you think about it, the school must have had the sheriff's offices on speed dial, right? They must have been able to reach out to the sheriff's office and contact them immediately, probably more so than the parents did, right? I mean, there's almost certainly had to be protocols in place between the school and the sheriff's office, yet somehow these were apparently skipped over. So again, if you're going to blame the parents, why aren't you blaming the school administrators for something that happened on school property when they were all together? Inquiring minds want to know. Many on the left are up in arms that Ethan Crumbley had a gun in his backpack. I understand that. And how did the parents let this happen? That's a fair question that needs to be explored. But think about this for a second. Crumbley had the gun in his backpack. Where? During a meeting with school officials. So why was it the parents' sole responsibility to check Ethan's backpack? They were on school property. And again, school officials had clear evidence that this was a troubled and potentially violent young man who had been shopping for ammo just a day earlier. They had reasonable grounds for searching his backpack or calling in the sheriff's office or the SRO, the school resource officer, to do the same. But somehow only the parents have been criminally charged? Does this make sense to you? I mean, people are responsible for their own actions, no doubt. And unless someone is a co-conspirator, in my view, they really generally should not be criminally liable. Maybe civilly, but not criminally. So I'm not cheering for the school officials to be put in prison. But if the parents might go to prison for not checking the backpack during a meeting on school property, then shouldn't the school administrators also be going to prison as well? How can you criminally charge one, but not the other? What's the difference? Is it because one is a private citizen and the other are government officials? I guess we'll find out. Now let's talk about rushing to judgment. The county prosecutor quickly charged the parents with involuntary manslaughter. Not only did the authorities come up with these novel charges, they even sent out a manhunt for these two distraught parents after the parents failed to show up for their arraignment. The prosecutor insisted the charges against the parents were not about establishing a new precedent. She said, "I am by no means saying that an active shooter situation always results in a criminal prosecution against parents, but the facts of this case are so egregious." Okay, that's what the prosecutor said. But I guess I'm confused about something. You see, the actual facts of this case are still right now barely out. I mean, yet they've charged the parents immediately. Okay? Typically, in my experience as a lawyer, there would be an extensive factual investigation and even a dialogue between the parents' lawyers and and the prosecutor about whether or not a charge should come down and what the charge should be and whatnot. It's not like there was any evidence these parents were going to jump on a private jet and fly away to some foreign country to escape justice. There was no evidence that something like that was going to occur. So why did they have to rush out there and charge these parents immediately before any of the facts were in? Okay? Again, what happened here was not any kind of detailed, long-going investigation of anything. Now, again, I think we should compare what happened to the charges against the parents, okay, with how the same prosecutor has been treating the government school officials, right? The government officials, the school officials who were in on the same meeting as the parents, who knew much of the same information as the parents, apparently. They had at least as much opportunity to diffuse the situation as the parents did, maybe even more, right? Because it took place on school ground, and the school almost certainly knew how to get a hold of the sheriff's office and the SRO in a way the parents did not, okay? But again, there's no rush to judgment here, or maybe there is, right? Again, the superintendent has begun a third-party investigation into the handling of the information leading up to the shooting in Michigan. Sounds reasonable, right? Yeah, I think it does. But again, you can't have one standard for charging parents and a different standard for not charging or charging school officials that work for the government, right? You can't have two different standards in the same case. That, to me, is not proper. Let me be clear. Based on what we know so far, it does look like the parents might have made a series of poor judgments. I'm not disagreeing with that necessarily. Of course, we're still learning the facts. At the same time, though, it's wrong to turn a blind eye to potential government negligence. Okay? It's wrong to blame the parents solely here when the government had some involvement with the immediate events right before the shooting. After all, how could the shooting rampage only be the mother's fault when she was the one that texted her son after she heard about the shootings, "Ethan, don't do it," right? She was clearly saying, "Don't do it." And how could it be only the father's fault when he was the one to call 911 to report a gun missing from his house and to say he believed that his son could be the shooter? That doesn't seem to be the actions of guilty people, not in my opinion. But again, from what we've heard so far, the left doesn't seem to be especially interested in these questions when it comes to trying to stop guns in America. Instead, they're going after the parents. And you know what else they're talking about? Guess what? More gun control. Well, that's a surprise. Who would have thought they would come up with that play out of their usual playbook? Right? We've already seen this because politicians have already started the familiar cry, we have to do something. Even the prosecutor joined in, right? She said that of the Oxford shooting, quote, if this incident is not enough to revisit our gun laws, I don't know what is. What is she talking about? I mean, murder's already illegal. Anti-gunners, of course, are very good at letting government off the hook for mass shootings. Look at what happened after the 2018 Parkland school shootings. An FBI investigation revealed a long series of failures by government officials and entities. I mean, for example, we know that local law enforcement had failed to act even though there were dozens of interactions with the eventual shooter, Nicholas Cruz, who was an extremely troubled young man. The school district down in Parkland had ignored repeated warning signs from Nicholas Cruz, the shooter, and again, they never informed the SRO or the sheriffs of these concerns either. But how much did you hear about any of that? I mean, after Parkland, the media and the anti-gun activists were in full cry against guns, seeking gun control, right? The media vilified law-abiding gun owners as a general matter, and they were mum about government entities that could have and probably should have stopped the shooter. You know who noticed these failings? I'll tell you who. The father of one of Parkland's victims, Andrew Pollack, who lost his daughter Meadow on that day down in Parkland, Florida in 2018. In response, he tried to bring some attention to his findings about what happened down in Parkland to the public when he wrote a book in 2021 called Why Meadow Died. He discovered many red flags that the school district had apparently ignored, and you know what else? Now Pollack is actually pointing out the many similarities between the Michigan shooter and his daughter's killer, Nicholas Cruz. He was aghast that school administrators, quote, let the mentally ill kid go back to his classroom after drawing those pictures. That's what he said. Andrew Pollack said, quote, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not saying those things are going to stick, but they have blood on their hands as much as the parents, close quote. Now, I'm telling you, I am a lawyer and I'm here to tell you, he might actually have a great point here when it comes to the government state actors that have yet to be charged. Make no mistake, charging the parents of a shooter is a dangerous game. What happens when gun owners can be charged for violent crimes that they themselves did not commit? This looks like another way to dismantle America's lawful gun culture. Right? That's something anti-gunners have been trying to do for decades. Starting in the 1990s, there was a spate of frivolous lawsuits trying to hold gun makers and distributors liable for crimes of individuals committed using their products, individuals over whom the industry had no control. The problem became so bad that in 2005, Congress actually passed a law that President Bush signed protecting the gun industry from this sort of liability. Sadly, anti-gun lawyers and judges have found ways around this law in certain cases. But now you see where the next frontier may be. That would be blaming the parents. Now, this is quite significant for the following reason, because the way I see it, and this is important, is that if you start charging the parents, the anti-gunners start to send a clear message to Second Amendment parents across the country. And that message is this: don't do it. Don't teach your kid how to operate firearm. Don't educate them about guns. Don't let them use firearms. Don't let them learn about this. Don't teach your kid how to hunt. Don't take your kid to target practice. Don't give your son your father's favorite rifle. And if you do, there may be devastating consequences to you and your middle-class lifestyle. Mr. and Mrs. Parent, be aware of this. Now you see, charging the parents here, as I see it, is not just about those parents who may have engaged in wrongdoing. I don't disagree. We'll see. No, I think that this is really an attack on America's future gun culture. That's what this is really about. Because the anti-gunners want your kids to be like the people who live in places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York City. And you know these people, a lot of them write for the papers, right there in the media. These are people who've never touched a gun. They don't know what guns are. They think it jumps out of a cabinet and goes shooting without any human involvement, right? And they not only have they not touched guns, they certainly haven't even fired them, most of these people. They're scared of firearms. And they can't understand why anyone needs a gun because they don't have them and they don't even know what they are. And they blame firearms, of course, when a bad guy with the guns kills a good guy. Because they also don't understand not only about guns, they also don't understand the social utility and personal benefits of owning firearms. So let's wrap up. Charging the parents in the Michigan case sets what may become a disturbing precedent for gun crime prosecutions. Remember these 3 reasons why this might be the case. First, just like the charges against Kyle Rittenhouse, these parents were charged very quickly without a full investigation. Kyle Rittenhouse was charged for his crimes literally in a matter of hours, and these parents were charged within a day as well, okay? Why the rush to judgment? Second, prosecuting parents of shooters opens up new potential avenues for prosecuting lawful gun owners. Keep in mind, the parents didn't kill the school children. The shooter did. The left wants to make guns seem as radioactive as possible, like they're super spreading weapons of destruction. They want to charge citizens regardless of whether they actually committed a crime, because they just don't want you to be involved with firearms in America. This very well may be an attack on our future gun culture to deter parents and grandparents from sharing their information about firearms with their children and grandchildren. And third, while prosecutors rushed to charge the parents with a crime, they used an entirely different standard for school officials. I'm sure the report from the final investigation of this school shooting will have scathing details about the school's failure to stop the shooter. But here's the difference. None of these government officials, these school officials, have been charged with involuntary manslaughter or anything else, and they haven't been put in jail, and they haven't had $500,000 bonds set on them. And why is that? It's because, as I see it, the anti-Second Amendment playbook calls for demonizing guns and gun owners, not for demonizing government and government officials, including school officials. So hopefully you learned something here. Thanks for joining me, the 4 Boxes Diner, where we serve hot, fresh Second Amendment news and analysis. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe and spread the word. And we'll see you again next time at the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.